then cold again tomorrow. And I'm your host today, and I get to introduce this wonderful slate of speakers. The first is going to be Jennifer Eklund, is the owner of the Learning Experience, an early education and daycare facility in Doylestown. She's also an active and engaged community leader. Also, there's Kevin Putman Jr., is president of Penn Color, Inc., a developer of color. He heads up a family business that deals globally while maintaining a vibrant local impact. Next is Richard Paynton, the CEO and CTO of Dontech Incorporated, an AS9100D and ISO 900 2015 designer and manufacturer of optic filters, lamination, and thin film coatings for precision optics, display, and touchscreen assembly. He also markets services to the military, medical, avionics, industrial, and government electronic industries. And finally is Jeane Vidoni, is president and CEO of Penn Community Bank, the largest mutual bank in the Eastern Pennsylvania. Welcome all these speakers. And this is about leadership, which I think is a great topic and very important in today's world. You know, because I think leadership is something that in some companies is kind of lacking from what I'm hearing from a lot of feedback. So welcome, and let's get started.
Irv, did you want to have everybody go around and introduce themselves right before, just a real quick, so that the speakers know to whom they're talking?
Sure, that's a good idea. I want to start with, why don't you do that? Because I don't really have the whole screen process.
Okay, so I'm Amanda Solar, and I am Chief Operating Officer here at the Chamber. Vale, do you want to go next and introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I muted so that you wouldn't hear the phone ringing. Vale Garvin, President and CEO of this wonderful chamber. Welcome.
Okay, and then Jennifer, you want to just introduce yourself?
Hi, oh wait, which is there more than one Jennifer? Sorry, I'm born in the 70s. I have like 7 friends that are named Jennifer. My name is Jennifer Eckfield. I own the Learning Experience in Doylestown, and I just celebrated my 8th anniversary of being open.
And Bobby Waite.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Part of Bucks County Magazine. I'm a sales executive. I'm here with the Bucks County Magazine. It's great to be here. Great to see everybody.
Alan Ash.
Hi, I'm the advertising director over at the Bucks County Herald newspaper and charge of the River Towns magazine. Good friends of the Waites. Worked with them for many years. Your dad, Bobby, and we also have like a bunch of other publications. But glad to be here.
Jeane Vidoni.
Good morning, everyone. President and CEO of Penn Community Bank. Happy to be here today.
And Tom Brunt.
Hello, folks. Tom Brunt, Teb Web Innovations. I do video production and find creative ways to use video technology, whether it's standard video or 360 video, VR video, to help clients.
Awesome. Teresa Farah.
Good morning, everyone. I am Teresa Farah, and I'm the general manager at the River House at Odette's Hotel in New Hope. Happy to be with everyone.
Thank you. And Lisa?
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Bothwell, and I'm a corporate attorney at Antile, Maslin, Beckman in Doylestown. It's nice to meet everybody.
Mary?
Hi, Mary Beth Little. I'm the Chief Accounting Officer at QNB Bank, and it's nice to see everybody again.
And Julie, I love that name. That's my youngest daughter's name, so I'm partial to
that. Yay. Hi, I'm Julie Getz. I am a manager at Kreischer Miller, and wow, that month went pretty fast, but I'm so happy to be back and to see everybody. So happy day after Tuesday.
Awesome. And speaking of daughters, I'm about to introduce a father of 3 of them, Richard Paynton.
Amanda and I exchange children's stories every day at Crossroads Bakery. So anyway, Richard Paynton, President and CEO of Dontech. I'm a second generation of a 50-year-old family business here in Doylestown.
And Kyle Smith. Oh, Kyle, you have the pleasure of being with Kevin today. That's exciting.
Yeah, I do. You stole my thunder there. So my name's Kyle Smith. I'm a group leader of energy curables here at Penn Color, and I work for Kevin. So pleasure to be here, everyone.
And Helen.
Hi, morning everyone. Helen Amelsberg. I own and run Vacation Crusaders, which is a travel agency here in Furlong. Happy to be here.
Tammy Mancuso.
Morning, everyone. Tammy Mancuso, Manager of Governmental Relations for Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority.
And then the guy who works with Kyle, Kevin Putman.
Yes, hi everybody. Good morning. Kevin Putman here. I'm the President and CEO of Penn Color, and have the pleasure of working about 10 feet from Kyle there. So we should be in the same room, by the way, Kyle. I don't know why we're not.
That's funny. And back to Irv, you know, Dale and I cannot let you get away without just sharing with the group that you are an Olympic medalist. Can you just tell them how that is so? And then you take it away.
I was a silver medalist from the 1968 Olympics on 110-meter high hurdles. So that's the exciting news.
Wonderful.
The only way Amanda found out is a friend of mine snitched. Before that, she didn't really know for actually about a year, wasn't it, or 2 years?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we've known each other, and then a friend snitched, and I said, if I had a medal, I'd be wearing it every day around my neck. And he set a world record, and he's just modest and wonderful. So we're happy he's here. And he also has a lot of business success, but I just always go with the Olympic medal story.
Well, you know, I look at it as, you know, I always turn pages. You know, for me, it's what's the next page and what's the focus for the next page. Not that I don't appreciate the last, you know, what happened before, but I found it's actually has been a lot more fruitful for me when I look forward and not backwards. And as we're talking about leadership, why don't we jump right in and start with Jennifer.
All righty. So I'll give you a little bit of backstory about my journey. So I spent, since I was probably 13 or 14, working in the service industry. And I never had a weekend off unless I requested it. And I learned all about, you know, customer service, and there's a difference between customer service and customer experience. And while most people don't or think about the difference, that there really is, from, you know, making people happy, but what are they experiencing when they enter your business? You know, what kind of feelings do you give them when they enter your business? So I went to college to be a teacher. Always knew I wanted to be a teacher. And my parents decided that they were going to invest in a seasonal business, and they bought a Dairy Queen. So I graduated college, not really knowing. I mean, my parents were very good business people, but not even thinking. I looked at my father and I said, let's just open as many Dairy Queens as we can. And I put teaching on hold. So I spent 11 years, sorry, I'm at work. I spent 11 years scooping ice cream and really learning what it meant to run a good business. I was young, I worked a ridiculous amount of hours a week. And that seasonal business really wasn't seasonal because the locations that we opened were 24/7 all year long. You know, one was on South Street, which I actually had to hire someone to stand at the front door at 3 a.m. to stop letting people in because it could have gone all night. And then we had another location at Grand Avenue, which again, it's those little nuances and the things that you do to give that experience. I mean, I love Dairy Queen to this day, but you know, when people would come to our store at Grand Avenue, they would ask if we were giving things away because there was always a line out the door. But it was about, you know, the little things, that customer experience, where even to this day, and it's been, I mean, 20 years later, all the collages, all the pictures of people that I took, every person that walked in that room, I knew their parents' names, I knew their children's names. Their pictures are still hanging on the walls in that Dairy Queen. And those kids are now in their 20s and 30s. We always had movies playing, you know, before you had Wi-Fi and cable, you know, and people would sit and they would spend quality family time. But there was never a seat in the house. So I did that for 11 years, and I learned that, you know, you can't be too independent. There's always going to be someone else that will be right behind you. And good business means that when you open at 11 o'clock and you say you close at 11 o'clock, that's what you do. And you don't close early, and you don't change your hours, and you don't put signs on your door because you don't have any customers and you're bored and you want to go home. Just those little things. Those are the things I learned there. And then one day I decided that, you know, my biggest decisions in life were Rainbow and chocolate jimmies, and I was bored. And I decided to go back to get my teaching certificate and do what my passion was. And my passion was to teach. So I got my certificate. I went on a job interview, literally down the street where the Bar Nature Center is. It used to be a Bucks County Youth Association where they catered to at-risk kids that were taught off-site locations throughout all of Bucks County. And it was a nonprofit. And at that point, you know, I had bought a house, and I went from being able to afford my life to working nonprofit. So if anybody's worked nonprofit, you know that is not a livable salary. So then I went back to the service industry, and I was probably 34 before I had one job. So I always had two jobs. And I just started to hone my craft, learning, you know, my behavior management, learning, building relationships with my kids, and, you know, teaching. And then, long story long, I got married. I had a son. I had been teaching with at-risk kids my entire career. It's my niche. It was something that I was just, that's my superpower. That's what I was very good at, connecting with troubled kids. And I went on maternity leave. Then I decided that I would go back to teaching, and I stepped it up a notch because I went from working with nonviolent at-risk kids to violent habitual offenders in a boys detention facility. And I loved it, but it was very dangerous. And I was there for about 6 years. And my husband was completely supportive. The problem is that it was a 24/7 lockdown facility. So there would be days where I would be on lockdown, I'd be on the units, I didn't have a phone, nobody could reach me. If it snowed and people couldn't get to work, there was no such thing as calling off for 24/7. You had to have ratios, and you had to make sure that the facility was safe. So I'd sleep on my office floor. And I went from being a teacher there to an actual administrator and running the entire education department. And that's where I really learned the difference. And it was a humbling experience for me, because being a boss is not the same thing as being a leader. I will never ask my staff to do anything I won't do myself, but I had a very difficult transition going from, I was a good teacher, but I was an excellent behavior manager, and I'm a good people person. when you work in an environment and you're very good at what you do, your job is to mentor others and teach them not to do what you do, but to excel at what their skill set is and what they excel at. And I remember being in a meeting with, 50 teachers, and we were all talking and sort of brainstorming. And I had a woman look me and say in front of the entire room, well, not everybody can be an Eckfield. And that really hit me hard because I realized that I was failing at being a leader. I was failing at being a mentor. And what I needed to do is kind of refocus on, you don't need to do it the way I do it. You just need to find what works for you and keep improving on that. So meanwhile, my husband in the back of my head just kept saying, this is really violent and you get hurt a lot. I mean, I'd get hurt a lot because it was a hands-on facility. So if anybody doesn't know anything about trauma-based youth, it's not what is wrong with you. You should never say that to anyone. We all have trauma, but it's what has happened to you in your life that has caused you to react the way you do. And there are people that don't have coping skills. They don't have self-soothing skills, de-escalation skills. And all of those things are very useful in the work environment because it helps you communicate. It helps you make rational decisions instead of emotional decisions. And it gives you tools to really think about the next steps you're going to take. Again, instead of how many of us have made reactive decisions that were poor decisions, especially when it comes to business. So when I was there, it really taught me a lot about understanding, not so much, and I don't mean empathy or compassion. I mean, one of the things that we'll say here is, I never want to hear a teacher say to a child, you should know better. They don't know better. I know adults that don't know better. It's our job to teach them better. So again, I was getting hurt. I had a brand new baby, and my husband wanted to do something entrepreneurial and open our own business. And he looked and he did his due diligence and he looked in all these things. And for me, it was just like, no, I'm a teacher. I'm a mentor. I'm a teacher. I want to work with kids. And finally, we stumbled across the learning experience and we started talking about doing a childcare facility. And we weren't really sure that we could pull off something this big. If you don't know, my building is over 10,000 square feet. I have currently 195 active children in it, and there are 228 enrolled. I have almost 50 employees when they like to show up. And this was this was my whole life. This was everything I had. And it took us 5 years to build out. And then I had some issues with the township and some of the building codes. So for my contractors. So I missed that window of enrollment, which is usually like July and August. I was supposed to be open by then. And I didn't open until October 1st of 2013. So, 10,000 square feet per square feet, Doylestown, my rent is ramping. I opened with 5 children. 1 was my own and 2 were staff members. And I didn't know anyone, even though I'm from this area and I grew up here. When you own a business, it's completely different. And I'm not a child or a teenager anymore. So I did what I thought I should do. I joined the chamber. I got active. I made myself present and slowly but surely built my business. So I would say that the keys to my success, I think, is to be present. No one will ever run your business the way you do. However, if you build your bench and you mentor and create leaders within your business that can do what they need to do and you trust them. I have 2 admins in this building. I trust them with my whole life. They can run this building without me in it. Do I want that to happen? No, because I love being here. But I would say that the keys to my success is that I'm present. I actively work on communication because I think that's the hardest thing for people to do, because 85% is like perception or how they perceive what you're saying. People get reactive and defensive. You know, we try and be emotionally intelligent in this building and really do a lot of check-ins because, again, it's a human living building and people carry in things and they create collective disturbances that affect your business. And while I know it sounds sort of hokey, collective disturbances, I think, are one of the biggest issues, because what happens when someone's having a bad morning, they come into work and they snap at you, or they're curt in some way, and then it affects your mood. And then what happens is it's a ripple or a trickle down effect. And, you know, we're very mindful of being socially responsible, philanthropic, active in our community. And this is the one thing, anytime someone asks me about opening, you know, a learning experience, you know, I say it's about community, it's about family, and it's about building relationships. If you think you're just going to build it and they're going to come, they're not, because there's a million daycares around me. And that's okay. And I'm not going to be everyone's fit, but it's like I said, it's the little things. Customer service is one thing, but what my family's experience when they walk in this building, from, you know, the smell, the popcorn machine, the coffee bar, you know, I cook my staff lunch every day. We do snack time surprise, because you know what, you just work the whole day. And for those of you moms and dads who experience the, you know, I worked 6:30 to 6:30. So my husband, for the first few years, I don't think our daycare even thought that Jack had a mom, let alone my dentist. I mean, his dentist never saw me because he worked from home or he had a flexible schedule. But he was that 6:30 to 6:30 kid, and I would work all day. We'd rush to pick him up. I'd spend 43 quality minutes of time with him, feed him, bathe him, put him to bed, and we'd start the whole process. And when I first opened, I'd wake Jack up at 4:30 in the morning, and we would drive in the middle of the night, and we'd come here, and he'd sleep on my floor before he would go to school. And what's interesting is that mom guilt for me, those are some of his favorite memories, because he calls them our date nights. Can we go on a date night? Our you know, and we would go to Starbucks and do things. But again, you know, those are the things that, you know, so when parents pick up and there's like a snack table full of, you know, hummus and carrots or crackers and cheese or whatever it is, it's just those little thoughtful things, you know, because they're starving or they want to feed their kid a snack before they go home because they're going to be hangry. And again, you know, I don't want to blather on. I don't know how much time I have, but that pretty much sums it up. It's just about, you know, setting an example and leading by example. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. That was great. I think there was a lot of good information there. By the way, why don't we hold questions till the end so that we can get through all of these presentations. Next is Kevin Putman, Jr.
Okie doke. You know, I actually have a couple slides I'm going to use here, so bear with me a sec. Are you seeing slides?
Yes.
And are they moving slides?
Yes, they are.
Hey, wow, we got it going. Hold on one sec. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Again, it's good to be here with all of you. I've prepared just a couple slides that kind of walk through my work history, but I'll start with, this is me. I am Kevin Putman. I'm a 37-year-old guy, married. I've got 2 little crazy girls there that are 2 and 4 years old. And like I'm sure most of us on this call, I live in Bucks County in New Hope. So I work for a company called Penn, And I have just a couple slides. I think it's maybe interesting to give a high level overview of what we do and kind of how we're positioned as it kind of doves later into our discussion. But this is a location of our Hatfield site. This is my little office here, and Kyle works in a lab right here in our Global Technology Center. So about Penn Color, our vision is, our core mission is to inspire our customers and to make them happy. We do this while being ethical, transparent, and respectful to our customers, our employees, and our business partners. And we drive business success by providing an exceptional customer experience with an emphasis on delivering products and services that enhance our clients' ability to succeed in an ever-changing world. So that's what we're about. But what do we do? So we make what are called pigment dispersions, super high level, but essentially we take various different raw materials, resins, various different types of stabilizers, and in utilizing different pigments or dye chemistries that provide a color aesthetic, we produce what are called master batches or liquid dispersions, where we provide or we consolidate those materials and we put them in a form, and I'm representing two of those forms here, that our customers can use. And across all the different markets that we support, we're really working with really the who's who in each of the different industries that we're aligned with. You know, many of these companies here, I'm sure you all know, some of the biggest brand companies out there, Procter & Gamble, Unilever, L'Oreal, 3M, among others. So really the who's who of various different global industries. And at a super high level, we're really, as an organization, focused on really three core market segments. And the first for us would be transportation and infrastructure. And that would include products and services that can go, that can do everything from coloring the exterior of your car to the coloration of various internal components that you'd see on your car, some of which I'm representing here. In addition to the infrastructure that supports general travel, right? So technologies that would go into reflective signage on highways, UV technologies that would go into coating fiber optic cables, among many other applications. The next big market segment for us is building and construction. Again, I'm representing some of those market segments within that category. And again, that would include applications that you find on the exterior of your house, things like vinyl siding, composite decking, roofing and railing materials, among others, as well as materials you find on the inside of your home. We would provide technologies that would color the carpets in your house, the LVT or cushion vinyl flooring, wallpaper, laminates, lighting lenses, among other things. And the last core market for us is consumer goods. And this for us is our largest and fastest growing category. And again, I'm representing some of those applications here. Everything from food and beverage and home and personal care packaging to technologies that would go into medical device applications, pharmaceutical applications, among other things. And really at the end of the day, across all of these different business units, we really are doing three key things. We are helping our clients differentiate their products from an aesthetic perspective. So, in the example of packaging, think of any shampoo brand or laundry care brand that you use. It's all about shelf presence. When you go to the store, you want your product, your brand, to really stand out, right? So we work very closely with customers to create unique aesthetics that can help differentiate them from their peers. We also work with our clients to really ensure there's good uniformity across their ecosystem. And the perfect example for that is the interior of a car. We go into our cars today, I'm sure you'll all recognize there's a lot of different types of materials made from a lot of different types of resins. There's a lot of different types of colors in there. And when we're working with these automotive brands, they want good harmony. They want, the dashboard to match the door panel. And there's quite a lot of science, believe it or not, in achieving those types of things. Tesla's a good example. All interior Tesla coloration comes from Penn Color. That would be a good example of an automotive application where it's really about color harmony across a multitude of different things. And the last key area is for us functionality. So aesthetics aside, it's about developing chemistries, technologies that provide various functional benefits to whatever our customers are making. So if it's a food package, say pick Heinz ketchup, we will develop technologies that will extend the shelf life of the ketchup product itself. We'll produce and introduce those technologies into the actual bottle, right? That would be an example of a functionality that we would develop. I have some other ones listed here: anti-counterfeiting, UV protection to extend the durability of a product that would be used outside. So instead of, say, your vinyl siding lasting 20 years, we would develop technologies that would allow it to last 30 years, those types of things. In terms of our organization, we're headquartered here in Hatfield, Pennsylvania. I'm representing our global sites. We have, I think, 7 manufacturing sites globally, along with 3 regional technology centers, one in Europe, one in the US, and obviously one in Asia, which we're in the process of building as well. And just some fun facts about our business. We employ north of roughly 750 people. Last year, we sold roughly 4,000 different individual products. We have 37 different technology types. These would be technology platforms that guys like Kyle have developed that we leverage into our markets. About 125 employees dedicated to research and development, and so on and so forth. You can see the statistics here. So a little bit about myself. My career path, I got to be honest with you, is probably a little bit boring. My only experience professionally is within Penn Color. And you can kind of see here, my progression starting from when I graduated college in 06. And you could see a steady progression every couple of years. And really, I think that the points I would want to make on this slide are, for me personally, and I think it really, Jennifer, I think, spoke to this as well. Exposure is everything, and you only know what you know. And if I reflect back on the 6 different jobs I've held at Penn Color, each one of them provided for me a lot of great learning opportunity. And with each experience, they build on each other. So for me, for example, when I started as a technical sales representative, reflecting back on that, what did I get out of that? I learned a lot about organization. I learned a lot about self-management, as an external sales rep. I learned a lot about, or I got very comfortable being in front of people and having to interface, and also got a little bit of a taste for success, which I think is very important, right? As I then shifted and had an opportunity to actually relocate to Europe to start up a new business for Penn Color back in 2010, boy, I learned a lot very quickly about how different cultures are and how you have to adapt to those differences. And the only way you can understand those things is to be exposed to them, of course, but the importance of being open-minded is, in my opinion, as paramount as anything, as you continue your careers and get into leadership positions. So for me, going to Europe, it was really a very eye-opening experience from a culture perspective, very eye-opening in terms of how business is done differently outside of the US. It was also a great opportunity for me to fail. We had, as a business, a very poor plan. If you look back on it, it was not a great strategy. And quite frankly, there were a lot of headwinds we faced because of that. And personally, the best way to learn, in my opinion, is through failure. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that here, maybe in the next slide. But as you could see through my career here, with each jump, with each opportunity, it's opportunities to learn different things. And if I would do a lot of things differently if I could go back in time to 2006. And one of the things I would definitely do differently is if I could have listened better and taken more advantage of the opportunities to learn from others, not only people within my business, but people externally. Let's think about it. As a sales rep, you're exposed constantly to other businesses, the way they do things, different people, different mentors. And as I matured, I took more advantage of those things for sure. But if I could reflect back in hindsight, I wish I had that appreciation right out of the gate, because, and I'm sure every person that's going to speak today will echo, you're only as strong as not only the people around you, but also you're only as strong as what you've learned through your career. And it is just so darn important to take advantage of these opportunities, because you have them every day. Every day there are opportunities to learn. And if you take advantage of those things, you're going to get a head start versus your peers. There's no doubt about it. So again, kind of reflecting back, for me, very, very clearly, and I don't think there's a playbook that every leader or every business owner has to follow. There's a lot of different ways to be successful. But when I think about what is very important for me in my maturation and my evolution, going from a sales rep to now running this business today, these are some things that for me are just so darn important. And I do think it's important, irrespective of your industry, irrespective of your management style, irrespective of whatever your team dynamics are. It's just so important, I think, and quite frankly, this for me is an order of priority. It is so important for a leader to be authentic. That was something I've learned in a very big way over the last 4 or 5 years. You have to be authentic. It's the only way that I know to build trust. And Jennifer spoke about the importance of trust. I can't echo that enough. Trust is everything. If you don't have trust within your teams, you have nothing. You have no engagement. You have no empowerment, and you're just treading water at best. So I think trust is critical. And as a leader, being authentic, I tell people internally all the time that the phrase I use for me is be naked. Be naked in front of people. It's okay. It'll build trust. It'll build credibility. Even if you're wrong, people appreciate authenticity. And I can't think of anything more important for a leader than being authentic. And obviously coupled with that is transparency. And I have them as two different things, because I think they are two different things. You can be authentic and still not be transparent as an organization. And you cannot be authentic and be transparent. So they're two different things, but transparency is critical. It obviously, couples with authenticity. And I can tell you within our business at Penn Color, if I'm honest about it, we were not always the most transparent organization to our employees. That's a fact. And we've worked very hard to change those things over the last couple of years, and it's had a very positive impact on a lot of different things, but engagement levels within the workforce being a big part of that. The next thing I think is, and Jennifer hit this too, you got to become a master communicator. Communication, God almighty. Kyle knows this because we talk a lot about it right now at Penn Color. We are recognizing the importance of communication and the need to communicate differently. As an organization, we're pretty conservative. You could have said a couple of years back we were a little bit maybe stuck in the 2000 and not really current with the environment out there today. And what I mean by the environment out there today, I mean the new labor demographics that are in the workforce, as well as the advent of social media and just digital communication. So, we have worked very hard, not just me as an individual, but as an organization, to ensure we're communicating not only more frequently and communicating around things that are relevant, of course, but we're doing it in a multitude of different means. So I think it's important, our company, we're global. I've got people in Singapore and Thailand and all over the world. We have to communicate a little bit differently than maybe a company that's a single site and there's 30, 40 people there. It's a different animal, but you have to find what works for your organization and drive the heck out of that. Communication, boy, oh boy, it's critical. again, Jennifer, I touched on it, I think, well, but we got to listen as leaders of an organization. You got to listen to your people for a million reasons. They usually have the right idea because they know what they're doing, because they're the ones doing the stuff. So from just a functional perspective, it makes sense. But when it comes to, engagement levels in the workforce, if you're not listening to your people, and again, I'm not saying Penn Color does this well. In my opinion, we don't, but we're getting much better at it. But if you're not listening to your people, again, where's the trust? Where's the engagement level? These types of things. You can listen without having to commit to things, without having to get yourself in a situation where you maybe feel like, well, geez, I got to go this direction because I'm listening. No, but it's just listening and giving good feedback. And goodness gracious, you got to be open-minded. Those two things go together. The world changes fast. I think we all see that, especially over the last 2 years. It has only accelerated the changes going on in the world. And if you're not open-minded about those things, because it's happening like this, you're very quickly going to be behind, in my opinion. So I think those things are very important. Trust and empowering your team. Again, Jennifer, I think, touched on this very, very well. But again, you're not going to be, in my opinion, I know Penn Color's business would not be successful or as successful as it could be if we didn't trust our employees and empower them to do their job, to decide on initiatives, to decide on ways things are done, or at minimum to have a say in those types of things. So again, Penn Color is not best in class in this area, but boy, oh boy, are we getting much better in this area. And the positives, and maybe Kyle would disagree with me, but the positives that I have seen come from that just in the last 6 to 12 months have been significant as it relates to retention, engagement levels, which we measure among other things. We're seeing that. And the last thing, I think, as a leader, you got to be comfortable with failure. And this kind of goes back to being authentic. You're never going to do, in my opinion, nothing special ever happens unless you're willing to take risks. No great invention has ever happened, and it was the first time right. You know what I mean? There's going to be failure, and in my opinion, a leader has to be very comfortable with that, and for a variety of reasons. A, it helps you make decisions, for sure, but more importantly, it sends a message to your workforce that we're willing to take chances. If something doesn't work out well, that doesn't mean you're going to be reprimanded or fired or whatever. It doesn't mean that at all. As long as it's a thought through initiative with where the risks and so on and so forth were understood, hey, failure is okay. As long as it was thought through and as long as we learn from it. And that environment did not always exist within Penn Color. And over the last couple of years, we've really worked to shift that, especially in the R&D community and in the marketing community, as those people are really driving a lot of obviously developments for us, and a lot of our investment goes into those categories. But finding and driving the value of failure, and I know that sounds strange, but there is an incredible value to failure. And not everyone's comfortable with that. Quite frankly, I think very few people are. But I think it's very challenging to become a leader in an organization of really any size, unless you can be comfortable with failure. And you have to make sure your team is equally comfortable with failure. And there's a lot that goes with that. I mean, I know that's easy to say, but there's bonus structures and all sorts of things that impact these things. So, keeping all those things aligned, is so darn important. That's all I have.
Thank you. That was learned a lot. I think that was very, very informative. Next, in terms of time, let's move right on to Richard Paynton.
What I'll do is I can quickly just go through a quick PowerPoint as well, if that's all right, just to kind of give a background on who Dontech is. So let me do that. I think I have the right screen up. So yes, it appears I do. So we're based in Doylestown. We have 4 buildings in the park, 2 we own, 2 we rent. We're roughly 100-person company, and we're just over 50 years old. Kind of go through, let's see, here we go. My kind of elevator speech is what we do is we don't make electronic displays, but we help the performance of them. By electronic displays, I mean LCDs, I mean OLEDs. And we also help the performance of optical assemblies. And a good example of an optical assembly might be the targeting optics on the Apache helicopters. So we help optical systems perform better in demanding environments, and our style of supporting our customers is a consultative type sale. So an engineer at General Dynamics, their land systems group that builds the Abrams tanks, once said that he looks at Dontech as an extension of their engineering group. So, you know, Kevin did a great job of kind of talking how he grew up in the business. So Dontech was formed by my parents. So technically, myself and one of my sisters helped out in manufacturing when the company was actually in our house. It was in our basement, our garage. And as a small kid, I'd come home from school and help out. So I always joke and say that my parents stretched a few child labor laws when they were starting their business. But as I went to school in engineering, I started to work in the engineering department. About a year and a half out of college, my dad unfortunately passed away, which taught me my first leadership example or lesson, and that's that you really have to be at least 2 or 3 deep in all your critical positions. So my mom and I spent the next 5 years kind of scrambling to hold the company together. At the time, we were 13 people, and we weren't sure whether, you know, we had enough of the pieces covered to continue the business. So we reached out to resources in the industry, and one of them was actually the founder of Penn Color, was Edgar Putman, which was a good friend of my mom, and she reached out to other business leaders to say, you know, how do we hold the pieces together? And through their guidance, we made some good decisions, and then not only stabilized the business, but then slowly started to build it. So I'll jump back to a little bit more about what we do, and then I'll go back into the history. So different colors, sizes, shapes. Basically, the 4 features we primarily add to optical systems are, you know, attenuating radio frequencies. So a commercial or a consumer application is like your microwave oven door. It prevents the radio frequencies in your microwave oven from getting out. It allows you to see through it. We do things that perform higher, both in attenuation, but also better in the optics. But we do other things such as improve the readability. We allow things to operate in very cold or very hot environments. And for kind of a niche area in the military, we allow computer displays to be on while someone's wearing night vision goggles and preventing the display from affecting the sensitivity of the goggles. So precision optics, again, similar features, but again, things that could be a commercial application such as a de-icing system that the airports use to take the ice off the planes. We make the optics, we help design them, and we can integrate them if need be. You know, quickly jumping into, you know, where they're used, it could be ground-based, shipboard, but over half of what we do is military applications. Again, talked a little bit about the Abrams tank. Avionics, both commercial and military. We're in the cockpit, and some commercial applications were in the seat back. Probably one of our big coups a handful of years ago was getting on the panoramic display on the Joint Strike Fighter, and what we do there is prevent any radio frequency noise from getting in through the optical aperture to prevent the system from malfunctioning, and also to allow it to be readable in direct sunlight. Government electronics, it can be used by Homeland Security. We're in the presidential helicopter, we're in the White House, so we've done some fun government applications. Could be a targeting system on the AC-130. It could be a traffic camera preventing ice and snow from building up on the traffic camera. Medical defibrillators, high-end patient monitoring systems, dialysis, ventilators were a big product for us, especially in the last couple of years, where we helped the displays be readable in an operating room environment, prevent a defibrillator from getting in the electromagnetic pulse from coming in through the optical aperture. I'll rifle through, again, the facilities. We have a lot of clean room space. We do thin film coatings, thick film coatings, lamination. We work with glass, plastic, and crystalline materials. We have a lot of the AS9100 is a aerospace specification. The ISO 9001 is a design and manufacturing for general quality for a broad range of markets. And the balancing act that we always have is, do you put money into the people? Do you put it into the facilities, either in manufacturing or in test certification and design? And so you're constantly, balancing all three fronts. And again, there's both web and LinkedIn information on the company. So that's the end of my share. But jumping back into my career development, so my initial focus was on product development, and after my dad died, my mother and I kind of split Dontech into different sections. So I focused on growing up the engineering, the technical sales, and kind of found out what our value proposition was for our customer base. My mom focused on the operation side, on the financial side. And then there were market areas such as, quality and HR, and areas that were kind of blurred between the two of us. And we slowly built the organization, and we had good success on that. But then over the last 20 years, we started to reorganize the company. And initially, I didn't totally understand leadership and management, and we kind of took a more tactical approach to it, where I took seminars and courses and read books on everything from the engineering side to finance to accounting to sales management. And we focused on bringing in talent, but we made the mistake where we kind of focused more on, who had great job skills. And the one area that we kind of overlooked was culture. And culture has nothing to do with race, sex, religion. It's, why do you do what you do? Why are you interested in what you do? And it's a really core element in building a strong team. And over the last 10 years, we, reshifted, and my focus as a leader in the company started to focus on building the team, looking at the structure and the systems in the organization. And initially, you look at a team as just being your internal team. And to quote from one of the seminars I went to a talk by Xerox. They had won the Malcolm Baldrige Award. And what the speaker gave as an example is that they were benchmarking themselves to their competition, to their past experience. And he realized that they were holding themselves back. And so at the time of the talk, the benchmark for material tracing was Federal Express. The benchmark for customer service was LL Bean. And so what they started to do is benchmark themselves to the best in the world. And they realized that they raised their bar, they raised their goal, and they made the company better. And it doesn't matter whether you're a 5-person company or thousands of people. You can learn from the best in any industry and apply elements of it within. And that was a great lesson. The other, in building the culture, there's a great business book by Jim Collins, Good to Great, and he has an expression of get the right people on the bus and you can go anywhere. But the the element of that I missed is that it's not only getting the right people on the bus, but you have to get them in the right job. You can have a great person on your team, but they're dysfunctional because you have them in the wrong job. And sometimes you need to build the team. In some cases, as the company grew, one job became two jobs. And when the person, just because they've been here long enough, doesn't necessarily make them the manager of a department. But if you put them in the right seat, they can be a superstar. And, you know, setting the standards in the company. And as a family business, we always had a great heart. We believe heavily in giving back in the community. We look at the employees as being part of the family, but we have a responsibility that okay isn't good enough. You have to be good and great in everything that you need to do. And you need to have those tough conversations with people if they're not right for the team. And as a leader, one of the hardest things I had to learn was sometimes you have to make the tough decision and admit you made a mistake. When you find you're changing your systems and your rules to manage around a person, you don't have enough time in the day to be creative to fill in all the voids. You know, we had talked about, you know, on at least the previous two speakers on, you know, it's hard building a company. And one of the mistakes I made early on is I was working 7 days a week, 10 to 14 hours a day. And what I realized is that you can't do everything yourself. And if you have an A team or a team of A players, you now have the ability to, you know, multiplex where you get 10x on your efforts. As I now tell the senior team, if you can't leave early at least once every 2 weeks, you haven't set up your department properly. And the hard part I noticed is going from the first generation to the second generation is that you have to let go of certain things. Otherwise, you become the pacing item within your organization. But, you know, as far as the team, you know, I mentioned on how Xerox benchmarks to their competition, but the other is that your organization is only as good as its internal team, but also you need to build your external team. One of the students today is with Kreischer Miller. Kreischer Miller is Dontech's second accounting firm. And as we grew, we realized we needed more. We needed a team member that could help us get to the next level. And you know, I look back on some of the military contracts. If they're over a certain size, you have to defend your pricing. You have to do cost disclosure. And so initially I gained some accounting, you know, a backbone to do this disclosure through a business or through a network of mine. But then I found that some of the specifics as the contracts became more complex, I needed an accounting firm that understood the FAR regulations. You know, we had 2 or 3 of our engineers that were, you know, spending their days trying to spin up on, you know, health, safety, environmental remediation issues. And, you know, back to an external team, Penn Color has a division, Penn E&R, and they helped us so that, you know, we got back to doing what is our job, which is, you know, focusing on the optics for our customers' application. It freed up 2 engineers. So, you know, as a leader, you need to know what you are and what you're not, and you need to look both internally building your team, but externally building your partners. And, you know, I joined a CEO roundtable, which is called Vistage, about 20 years ago. And one of the speakers was pitching on a project that was 10 times bigger than his current sales. And what he showed the UPS is who he was doing staffing for, that he was capable of doing it because he went to the presentation with his bank, with his other partners, showing that he could grow at the speed of business. And so never let go of your extended partners, both internally and externally. From a leadership standpoint, as a young kid, I learned 2 different styles of leadership, and one is positional power and the other is relationship power. And a lot of times people will talk about leadership and management and they kind of blend them the same. And what I learned, and at least my interpretation of the two, is that relationship power is the stronger of the two. As was mentioned before, asking questions, listening, walking the corners of a facility, be accessible. You build a relationship with the people that you work with. That's a very, very powerful type of leadership. And then you have the style of management where you just tell people what to do. And at times as a manager, you've probably heard the expression, praise publicly, reprimand privately, close the door. But then you're shifting from being a leader to a manager. And I learned both as a child. I worked for a retired vice admiral, and he was great at positional power. And then as in my young 20s, I met General Gray, who was the commandant of the Marine Corps. The man was phenomenal with relationship power. I would have done anything to not let down the man. And but it took me years to understand the lessons I learned at a young age. But back to the team and leadership, you have to empower the team. You basically have to grow yourself ideally out of a job. You have to hire people that are smarter than you, that bring a talent to the table that you don't have, but you don't let go of the team. So something that was probably only in the last 10 years I learned well is with your team, grow up the metrics, grow up the goals, have regular one-on-ones with them, communicate. When they come to you with a problem, have them suggest a solution. If they don't have one, send them back to think about it. Otherwise, what happens is you train everybody to come to you to solve your problems. And my problem as a leader was my background was in engineering, and a big focus of mine was problem solving. And so I was happy to be forthright to solve the problems. And what I realized is I was doing the company a disservice. Again, I won't delve into it because I think it was probably said better than I could explain, but I think having thoughtful mistakes is an excellent thing, that as long as you learn from them, you don't repeat the silliness. I look at some of the innovations at Dontech. Some of them were done by mistake, but again, we had good documentation, we had good traceability, so we understood what we did wrong. But out of some of those mistakes, we did innovate new products, new processing technologies. Even with customers, Jennifer did a good job of talking about customer excellence. From a leadership standpoint, if you make a mistake with your customer, either internal or external, you need to own up to it. But I found that if you make a mistake and you handle the problem situation well, many cases it's better than if you never made the mistake in the first place, because everyone worries that something's going to go wrong. And how you handle a situation, everyone's watching. If you handle it well, it adds a layer and a depth and a strength of the relationship. Everyone's human, everyone gets it. And again, there's a difference between a reckless mistake and a thoughtful one. And again, never, I'll say it again, ask questions. And I'll leave with a quote, not a particularly well-written book, but it has great leadership lessons, is written by Dave Packard. It's called The HP Way. And one thing Dave did is he always walked the corners. And when people came to him with ideas, he never ruled on the idea, whether it was good or bad. He asked questions so they knew he was listening. And then he always got back to them a day or two later, so that they always knew that he was going to think about it. And what he did is he created a strong culture in Hewlett Packard that, guided the company for a very, very long time. And so my final comment is, focus on culture. Know what you are, know what you're not, and, be ruthless on it. And we're starting to shift away from values, and we're starting to grow up what we call behavior statements because it shifts you from nouns to verbs. And so that everyone in the organization understands what we are, what kind of actions that we want in our everyday activities. And again, you're only as good as your team. Back to the Jim Collins, once you have the right people on the bus in the right seats, as the world changes, you can adjust at the speed of business. So that's all I have.
That was great. Thank you very much. We're learning so much from these presentations. I feel honored to be here and listening to them. Next is Jeane Vidoni. Jeane, are you ready?
Yes, I am. Good morning. Thank you. Wow. So Richard, Kevin, and Jen, I've heard so much commonality among the things that you've said this morning that I've made the decision that I'm going to try not to repeat all of it. And I also think, even though we know it, it's still amazing and somewhat startling that we hear people from so many different backgrounds coming to the same conclusions when it comes to how to be a leader, how to run a company, whether we're entrepreneurs or we're working in organizations. So, you know, this morning I noticed the attendees today, there's a mixture among yourselves, whether you're working in a more formal organization, or you're out on your own, or you're in an independent position with sales, or you know, you're in a law firm. I think that all of the lessons this morning, you know, that we've been reminded of culture and of people are going to hold no matter what. The other wonderful thing is all of these folks today, including you, I mean, we're focused on Bucks County. And so all the connections that we're making and that your members here at the chamber, it's incredibly meaningful. So I've been in banking 39 years. I've been in Bucks County operating around 16. And it's been incredible for me. I think most of you are familiar with banking, and most, I hope, are familiar with Penn Community Bank. So I'll just leave it at that, and we'll tell you that we have focused on something called servant-based leadership. That's actually a book that I talked about at a book club at the chamber, written by the last name is Outrey, A-U-T-R-E-Y. If you're interested in that, that might be helpful. One of the things that I wanted to talk about was creativity. And I think I heard this morning, whether we called it problem solving, whether we called it making decisions of what to buy and sell and when to change job. Creativity takes courage, and it can be applied no matter what business you're in. But it does take courage and a sense of self to assimilate all of the things that we're learning about and reading about and all of the folks that we're talking to in order to create something that is uniquely you as a leader. We talked about lifelong learning. And so, you know, I read funny books, I read crazy books. There's actually a book I'm going to tell you about. If you go and read it, you probably will think that I need help. It's called My Big Toe. It's My Big Theory of Everything. It's actually written by a physicist who sat down to meditate one day and now wrote a book and actually designed a game that's available on Amazon about creativity. And I'll just tell you that he believes in other dimensions now. So I'll leave it at that. But, you know, all of us, as we're saying, you know, we began our career in a pretty linear fashion. I mean, I'm in banking. I learned about math. I learned about numbers. And I think some of you have heard me say, as I grow up in my career, I actually use the phrase doing business backwards. All of you have already mentioned that this morning, which is we have to be technically proficient to be where we're at and to run a business and to provide a product. But beyond that, it's who we care about. It's connections and care. It's ethics. It's doing the right thing all the time, even if it's difficult. I heard just a little bit this morning, and I thought I would take a few minutes to talk about conflict. It's been one of the most challenging things along, my career, but also the most rewarding. And I've heard the word be authentic, be honest, but dealing with conflict as a human being is really difficult. And when things are not going well, how we approach that, whether it be with a customer, a colleague, or someone who works for us, or even a boss, learning those skills. And there's a way, right? There's an art to it and a little bit of a science, but I would encourage anyone on their career journey to really work on what do you do when things are not going well, particularly between people. And Jen, I think I heard you talk about that earlier. So another thing that I've heard all along from when I first got out of college was, it's business, it's not personal. And I just want to tell you that I don't agree with that. So I do agree with learning how to not take things personally, right? How to handle yourself. But as far as I'm concerned, it's all personal. I just think it's all personal. And when we retire and we go to that retirement party and we tell our stories, it's not going to be about the numbers or what we produced. We spend an awful lot of time in business talking about quantitative goals. As a matter of fact, when I was in college, I minored in psychology, organizational psychology, and some of you might be aware in Six Sigma, not saying that those things don't have a place, but trying to turn human beings into efficient machines so that we can produce more, faster, quicker, doesn't hold a lot of interest for me. So, and here I am, I'm having a good time. Another thing is, I always say, if you can wake up in the morning and you don't know what day of the week it is, whether it's Monday or Friday, and you don't feel sick about going to work, that might mean that you're in the right job and you're enjoying what you're doing. And even in the most quantitative and research-based fields like the Federal Reserve, which I have the luxury of being involved in, just to give feedback as a community bank CEO, the Federal Reserve, if you know, is really research-based. They spend all kinds of studies, all just statistical analysis of everything. And yet they want to know twice a year what's going on in the streets from local communities. And I have, they asked me to chair Philadelphia. And one of the reasons was because I don't talk numbers. And I only tell that story to tell you that it doesn't make any sense, right? I mean, what I learned was that if you want to sit at the table with the Federal Reserve, you're going to be able to talk about return on assets and what your interest rates are. And here, what's being valued are our stories and what's really happening on the ground. And I'm not going to go much further. I'll open it for anybody. If we have questions, I want to leave time for everybody to be able to ask any speakers anything. I think I've said this morning what's important to me, which is it's really about the people, and I'm sticking with that. And we're doing great from a numbers perspective. So I wake up every day trying to do the right thing and connect with others. And for Penn Community Bank and for myself and my team, it's really working for us. So thank you.
And thank you. I guess now we'll take some questions and then I'll get to do a wrap up of this session. Any questions?
I have one, actually.
I'll go after Kyle. Sorry.
Yeah, so thank you. They were all great. I really appreciate all four speakers, but the one question I had specifically was for Richard. We're in the process here at Penn Color, as we mentioned, of changing the culture. We do always look for good cultural fits here, and I specifically am in the process of hiring, not only for my group, but for the wider inks and coatings group in general, 5 new employees. We've got 3 of the 5 so far. We're looking for 2 more. And a lot of what we're doing is not only finding, scientific fits, but cultural fits. And I have ways of kind of digging down into that and seeing what I think would be a good fit. But do you have any advice for maybe the types of questions or the things that you do to to find and really determine whether or not someone would fit your company culture?
Well, first of all, I will tell you, have multiple people interview for culture, and have that be their only reason or their primary reason for doing the interviewing. And then the same thing for the technology, and then, kind of compare notes, and then have more than one interview. But a couple of favorite questions of mine, kind of zeroing in on culture, is the first of which I'll ask, I'll frame it out. I don't want a resume. I don't care whether it's business or personal, but tell me your life story and its greatest successes. And I define greatest successes as, if you're married, you call your spouse, and before you've said something great has happened, they can tell something like, why are you smiling so much? Your body language. So tell me your life story in that, so you get the person to tell what they're proud of, what they're excited about, what motivates them. And then and you also sometimes get that people don't listen to you because you told them, I don't want your resume. I can read your resume, and then they tell you their resume. But the other one is, if you were going to put together a board of mentors or a board of directors, kind of retroactively, who made you who you are today? You'll typically find a mom or a dad. You'll find a teacher, a sporting coach, and you see who they looked up to and why they looked up to that person, and just probe in those manners. As I always joke, but it's truthful. If you're not having fun at least 51% of the time, you're in the wrong job. And a lot of times you don't have fun because the people around you drive you nuts. Or the way the equipment, where the processes, the systems, the structure. But if you have fun, you're never going to be good to great at something if you're not like having that feeling, and they're paying me to do this. I would have done it for nothing. And a lot of that fun comes from your coworkers, and I think it really comes when there's a great cultural match. And then the flip side of it is, and this is stealing from Jim Collins, just realize when you hire someone, the interview process doesn't stop for 6 months. And follow up from them a month into it, hit them with the survey and answer questions as to what do you like, what do you don't like, what would you change, and some of them can be probing on culture. From a technology people, what we found great to kind of take that off the table as far as new talent, is we have 2 to 3 Drexel co-ops, because when you work with someone for 6 months, you get to know them. So whether there's a cultural fit, and probably 1 in 10 will hire full-time when they graduate. And in some cases, we realize that they're young, we'll grab them 5 or 10 years down the road. We'll just stay in touch with them. But then the other is, crank up your reference network, friends of the business, like star employees. People tend to surround themselves with cultural matches, so don't discount that referral. But I guess the best is, have 2 or 3 people deliberately interviewing for culture. And there's probably better questions to ask than mine, but those are my 2 favorite ones to get people talking. And again, you want them to talk most of the time. And you can even, for some of them, go out to dinner with them. If they bring their significant other, you can see how they interact. You can see how that other person is. All these things you can glean another perspective on the person. And there's personality profiles, whether it's Myers-Briggs, PI. There's a bunch of stuff that adds an element to it. But I think the most important is realize the interview process doesn't stop for 6 months. And then if you made a mistake, admit it, do something about it. Don't keep patching it. And that was the biggest leadership issue that I took a long, long time, is like, well, they're helping out and I'm already so busy. And, and when you finally make that tough decision, everyone around you is thinking, oh my God, why did you wait so long? So I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh, no, that was more than enough. That was great. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I was just going to thank everyone for, I feel like giving me the courage to be authentic. I feel like that was a run. There are a lot of running themes and great takeaways. So that was really helpful to hear because I feel like I'm always thinking, okay, what do I have to do? Who should I kind of be like, so thank you for that.
I just want to say one more thing to that, because I think it's important to something that Richard actually just said, about having fun in a workplace. You can't have fun if you're not authentic.
True, yeah.
Think about it. Like, if you're not being yourself, you can't have fun. It's impossible.
Mm-hmm.
So
I feel like that's not sustainable too. Like, you can't keep that going. Like that would
I'll
be
speak from personal experience. It is not sustainable.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, there were great presentations. What I would ask, maybe one question would be as a follow-up. I'm constantly trying to develop my skills as a leader, and I'm in sales, so my sales skills and communication skills. So if each of you I know you probably all do the same thing and you read a lot of books. Maybe each of you could recommend one book that you think is worth reading, and I can put on my list for this year.
Humanocracy.
Okay.
That would be mine.
I enjoy Leaders Eat Last.
I would put the servant-based leadership book on the top of mine.
Servant-based.
And only because I think I quoted Jim Collins 4 times. I'll put Good to Great, and it talks about what he calls level 5 leadership, which is you don't need to be in the spotlight. You push up your team, and it's big on growing up the team.
Great, thank you.
Can you say yours again?
That's a classic book there. Yeah, Good to Great.
Wait a minute, did somebody just say chop wood, carry water? Have you? Wait a minute. That's another book. Everybody, it's a really quick read. It's so easy, and it's like 170 pages, but it's about mastering your skill and being in the moment and being present. But it's called Chop Wood, Carry Water. Sorry, had to add that.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank everybody. I would like to just share some things about, leadership and my experience with leadership. I've had the privilege of having so many different kind of jobs. I mean, probably mostly marketing, but I also did sales management. I also ran the service program for Citibank Mortgage, did some strategic planning in that process. Sometimes I'm known for helping with, when I was working with Kentucky Fried Chicken, I led the development of the We Do Chicken Right program, which was wildly successful actually, because our sales went up like 18% versus a time when we were doing meal deals and discounting. And as a marketer, I hated giving away money anyway. So wanted to work on a intrinsic campaign. What I like about it more than anybody else, they don't know the story, is I had to go to the president of KFC and ask to break away from the National Co-op Mortgage or advertising agency, which was covering New York, and hire a small agency with the promise that I could fix New York because it was suffering. And so I had to really put myself on the line to do that and to get permission to get a breakaway agency, because I knew, our smaller account as part of the National Co-op Agency wasn't getting a lot of attention. So essentially, what I want to do is get a agency that would focus on and be, we would be an important client to them, and that's what I was able to do. And we worked on an intrinsic campaign where the rest of the country was doing meal deals, and that's when we came up with the We Do Chicken Right campaign. And, as I say, sales went up 18% with no margin erosion in that process. But my real experience after Kentucky Fried Chicken, I went to work for Citibank. And Citibank at that time was a very interesting culture. And sometimes your culture defines who you hire and who you need to hire. their culture was really one of everybody participation. And essentially, when I arrived there, you had to be, they attracted a lot of A-level managers. And the reason why they attracted A-level managers is they encouraged everybody to speak up. So running a meeting in Citibank at that time was somewhat chaotic because everybody wanted to speak up and everybody wanted to participate so it wasn't, so running that meeting, you had to manage somewhat chaos in the process. But coming from outside the banking industry, that was very great for me because I could run a meeting and I could listen to all of this input from everybody and I could understand, okay, that's an important point. I need to figure that one out. And I could also look at the other one going, I don't need that point for this project. But the point was, if you were going to survive as a manager in Citibank at that time, and it was run by Riston at the time, you had to be an A-level manager and you had to be confident and you had to manage that process. The only thing I would add to part of this leadership in this is I agree with the communication thing because I think that's so important. As a matter of fact, I work with a lot of small businesses and it's interesting when you're in a small business, you don't really understand how important communication is, or you don't understand how poorly you do it in the process. I'll give you a story. I had a client who was a small manufacturer and they had two groups. They had a group that did wet paint and then dry paint, but they were considered two different parts of the business in the same area. And they thought they were really good communicators. And so what I had them do is say, okay, you need to put together a 5-minute meeting, no more, or 10-minute meeting, excuse me, no more than 10 minutes with a fixed agenda and start working that fixed agenda. You could do it once a week. That's all you need to do it. And they started doing that. And what happened and what they found out was they weren't good communicators because they would go individually to people and talk about what they needed to do and what needed to happen, but they weren't getting an overall communication with everybody. Once that started, and they had to take notes. And once that started, what started to happen is the dynamic of these two groups that were doing different things started collaborating and going, oh, I have that experience and I can help you do that and so forth. And also because everybody heard what was going on, they had another dynamic that happened. Suddenly people that were calling in looking for the CEO, the secretary would look at them and go, well, what do you need? And they would tell them, and because they had the meeting and the notes, they could get their answers. So suddenly the CEO wasn't burdened with everybody tracking him down to get individual answers in the process. So communication wasn't happening the way it could be, and it freed up his time and did a lot more for that organization. So communication in a small organization really needs to be formalized in a process. And again, the meeting got to be 10 minutes, no more than 10 minutes ever, because it's not the same as a formal staff meeting. And so you got to understand that. So I think that and understanding culture. The interesting thing about I learned from Citibank was that when your mission, vision, and values is in line, and you understand the process that goes about that, it was pretty clear that they needed A-level managers to exist in their organization. Because if you weren't, you get run over, and it was kind of simple as that. And so I really got a good appreciation of, getting those things in line. And because I had, I think, pretty good management skills in the process, I got to do things like, run a national sales organization and actually run HR for the organization. So leadership, great in terms of communication. And I think I love the part about you really have to develop people all the time. It's about developing people so that really you technically work yourself out of a job because people get good enough to do what you do. Oh, and I think a key point of development is you got to understand the difference between good enough and you can do it as well as I do. Because unfortunately, they may never reach the point of doing things as well as you do, but the point is, do they do it well enough that you know, they can progress on what they're doing. And that's hard. That's you got to let go and understand the difference between as good as I can do it as opposed to it's good and works well. Okay, I think that kind of wraps it up. I want to thank everybody for their participation. Speakers did a marvelous job. I think that everybody here learned a ton of information that is going to be valuable in the in their business life and actually in their personal life too. So I've heard some really good points that apply to both. I want to thank everybody for participation, and if you have any follow-up questions, I just send them to Amanda and we'll make sure that you get some answers. Thank you very much for participating and have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. This was
That was
really
great.
cool.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone,
This
that
was
was
wonderful.
awesome.